Hi, so this video is going to be for anybody that wants to run an events company, and specifically I'm focusing in around how I ran my events business, which was a pop-up. They were pop-up parties here. So I'm going to go through the pros and cons to just give you some things to think about, because one of the things is, if you're very new to starting something like an events company, it's really good for you to know beforehand any of the pitfalls from someone that's done it, and then you can make a decision about whether or not you want to move forward, but also so that you can actually look at things really clearly before you start. So let's go through the cons first. Why I decided to start this, it really was a passion project. I just had my son. I was working and just, my job wasn't suiting me anymore. And I'd gone to these parties in London that were absolutely amazing. They were like pop-up secret parties. And the one that really stood out to me was one called the Candlelight Club, and it was a 1920s theme event with burlesque performers, live music, amazing cocktails. It was just amazing. It was like literally one of the best parties I've ever been to. And I thought, you know what, where I live, I live in a little village, kind of, if you imagine London's here, and I live up here. I live in a little village, but like our main town, if you like, is called Milton Keynes. There's about 360,000 people living there. I thought, you know what, Milton Keynes needs this. So I decided to run pop-up events in Milton Keynes. Now, one of the major cons for that area that I didn't fully understand to work out before I started this business was that in London there is a wealth of so many amazing venues and independent venues, and you've just got so many options and choices. That's why these events were run in like really cool spaces. So like the Candlelight Club was run out of an old warehouse, but it had toilet facilities. It was literally all you needed, and it just added a real like edge to the events. In Milton Keynes, we just really didn't have that. Not without kind of signing a lease for a warehouse for 6 months kind of thing. So I had to look at the venues that were available, and there was a lot less choice. So that's the first thing. Milton Keynes was very corporate, so there weren't really many independent venues. So I did manage to find venues, and one of the key things you need to think about as well is when you're running events, the key places where you're going to earn from it. Obviously, if you're setting this up as a business, the key thing you want to do is earn from it, isn't it? So the key place where you're going to earn from that is firstly from the ticket sale. But another significant area of revenue for your business is actually the revenue on the drinks that are sold on the night. Sometimes the drinks sold can double or triple what was made on the actual ticket sales. Now, so this is a really important consideration, because I wanted to take some of the revenue from the ticket sales, from the bar. So what I did was I would hire a hall or a venue that didn't have a bar, and then I would bring in a bar and negotiate a cut or a fee from them of, say, like, I'm going to take 30% of all the sales. Now, what you could do is you could go, what would be an easier way really of doing this is going into a venue that already has a bar for your first few events, so that you can just focus wholly on the event and not give yourself too much to do. Get into a good venue that you really like, and if you're bringing in you're bringing in customers for that bar, you can actually then go back, say on your second or third event, when you've got proof of concept, they've worked with you, they can see that you're bringing in loads of customers. You can negotiate with them that you want a cut of the bar takings. You could negotiate that. There's nothing to say that you can't. Because when you're running an event, you can literally move yourself to wherever you like, because all of your followers and the people that are buying your tickets, they are all online. So that's what I did. I moved around. I moved to lots of different venues, kept it, fresh. So The second thing you also want to think about when you're looking at the area that you're going to grow your pop-ups in, and this was something where I actually came a cropper, so it's really important, is that I was able to fill venues to about 250, 300 people. And obviously I'm making the revenue on those ticket sales. Now, what then happened was that Milton Keynes did not have any midway point venues where I could fit in, say, like 450 people to like grow to the next stage. My issue was there was these smaller venues for 350 or going all the way up to over 1,000. And that is where I then struggled, because the over 1,000, they wanted a significant fee to hire that space out. And that was then going to come off my ticket sales. But I also didn't know if I could jump from selling 350 tickets to, it's going to be a lot of pressure to sell 1,000 tickets to fill that event. And if you have a venue where the venue's too big for the amount of people, you lose your atmosphere as well. So there was several things at play there that made my growth really difficult in that particular area. Now, you might live in an area, so like I'm just thinking in the UK here, but obviously the US is massive, there's lots of different options. But if you live in an area where there's lots of different varieties of spaces, you're going to fare better on that, and then you're going to be able to grow more gradually. And obviously, like when you pay for like your burlesque dancer and your band, they can play to 300 people, but they can pay to 1,000 people. And when you have them at 1,000, then you're making really good revenue from your business off the ticket sales. Because let's say, as an example, I would pay a band, back then I was like paying like £700 for a band to play, but then my ticket sales were covering it, but the profit left over wasn't much. But if I was able to do that in 1,000 capacity venue, I would have made loads of profit, because I would have made way more than just the £700 to cover the band. So that's an important consideration. Do your research on your venues before you do anything else. You need to be able to see, what are my early stage venues? I need a small venue for my first couple of gigs. Then you need to look at your medium sized venues, and then you need to look at your large venues, right? One of the other key things about running an events company is that it's very, very localized. So, like while you can have your website online and people will travel, like depending on the type of event you run, I had people traveling from all over the country to come to my events because they were very niche, and people would stay in hotels and things like that. But when you're advertising out, you're more likely to get people from your local area. So you need to be looking at your map, have a look online at what the population is. Age demographics as well is really important, to see who you kind of cater to. So for example, mine were going out to like 30 to 50 year olds. I had quite a big market here in Milton Keynes. My issue was the venues. So that's an important point to consider as well. Another thing that's really important is it's very different if you want to run pop-up events just for fun. That's great. And you could do it and you could earn some really quite good money over it. You could actually do it and still have a full-time job. I must say it was quite stressful on the weekends that we were running our gigs, but it is possible. But if you were really looking at doing this as a full-time income, what you need to remember is that events happen at the weekend. So you could be working, or I was working for like 3 months to bring together an event, to sell the tickets to a big event that was then happening on a Saturday night. And I realised pretty soon that, okay, if I really want to grow this, I need to be running events every weekend. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, I know it might sound really silly, but I didn't actually realise that. I didn't realise, oh crikey, if I want to grow this as a business, I need to have events on all the time and I need to grow it. And that's where you need to think about that, because unless you were doing like an event every few months or something, that's fine. If you're a young single person, you don't have a family, that might work out really well for you. You don't mind working weekends. But for me, I had a little boy, and I was like, it impacted on our family life, you know, over time. So that's a really important point to consider. Also, in that then, where I said about like you work towards for several months to bring an event together, and it's all going to happen on across 5 or 6 hours. So there's a lot of risk and a lot of stress in that time frame. So as an example, I would put people on contracts because I was like, okay, this is a bit risky. I need to bring all of this together for these few hours. But there was one occasion where I had my venue, my sound engineer, and my bar all pull out 24 hours before the event was due to go ahead. And they were on contract as well. Like, I had them in a contract, but so that's a really important point to consider. I mean, if you're going to a venue, do you know what? I strongly recommend going to a venue where they've already got a bar, because you're going to avoid these risks that I fell into. So you could get around it that way. But it's just worth bearing in mind that, you know, when you're bringing everything together in a short period of time, there can be risks, and it is quite stressful to run it. I mean, crikey, I was doing food and all sorts. It's just quite mad. So there's some of the cons. Not major. They're all things that you could get around. The predominant thing, or the most important thing I'd say, is if you really are doing this to grow a business, the venue is the key. Don't start any of this until you've done your thorough research on the venues, and you want to be going towards venues where you're more likely to get a cut of the bar takings later on. So if you can look more at more independent or smaller businesses that might have a big premises, that's better than, say, like your chains. I don't know what kind of chains there are where you live, but if you're going through a chain, that's going to be much harder to try and negotiate bar takings. There are also some venues that literally run, you know, say like if they run live music events and things like that, that they're used to having that partnership from outside. So you're more likely to get in the door and get those meetings. But don't be afraid to just pick up the phone, ask those questions, go and visit the venues. And you want to be able to see about, you know, the lighting capacity, if they've got any staging, where you could set up a stage if you need to, everything like that. And you need parking as well, especially if you've got a band coming that needs to be able to park near the venue to get their gear in. So have a consideration of those things. So the pros, because I spent quite a long time on the cons, but there are a number of pros to this. So the first and most important is there are some business models where people literally put their house on the line, don't they, to like start their business, or they've got to leverage their house, or they've got to spend £500,000 on some kind of equipment, and then they've got to put their whole life into it, and it's really risky, or like take huge, great big business loans. With this type of business, you do not need to do that. So it's low risk. All I did to start this business was I set up a website. Now you can set up a website. Like back then it was more difficult to set up a business, set up a website, but now it's much, much easier. Your website and have an email address. Hell, you could even just, if you wanted to do it bare bones, you could just set up a Facebook group or something, you know, or have like TikTok running, or, you know, Instagram. And maybe go for a website later. I always like to have a website because it looks much more authentic, real. It's a real business, and I sell my tickets through that website. So it's really low level to start. All I needed essentially was the fee to cover the hall, the fee for the band, and the fee for the burlesque performer, and then I needed some money for my helpers. I was having some staff on the day, and I actually paid for some security as well at that particular venue. If you're going for a bar that's already got you know, that's already built out, they're probably going to have their own security and stuff like that. But I'd say I put aside, depending on what style of event you're running. I mean, if you were running a DJ event or something, it's very low cost. I mean, I wanted the live music, which costs, I put aside about £1,500 for that first event, but depending on what you're doing, especially if you're running a DJ event and say it's you or a friend, it's only going to cost you time in marketing. All right. So that's one of the major pros, that it's really cheap to set up. To my mind, having £1,500 to set up a first event is nothing in the grand scheme of the business world. Okay, the second is that the marketing to run an event, it's great marketing wise because you can have really interesting photos and videos that capture people's interest. I mean, if you're trying to sell insurance on the social media channels, it's very dry, isn't it? It's very hard to sell that because it's just not sexy. But my events and the pictures that I was putting up before were really eye-catching, images from the 1920s. So like, before you've done your event, you're obviously not going to have pictures of your event. So, but what I did was go through catalogues of 1920s images, 1920s videos on YouTube, link them in to give people a flavour of what it was going to be like. And then I used the performers' promotional material, because they all had their show reels, they had their videos, and I'd be like, Missy Fatale, she was the most incredible burlesque performer with, she did work with fire and everything. Her show reels and her videos were absolutely incredible. And it was posting them. It's like, this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to get. That's how you do your first marketing. And then when you've done your first event, you will have lots and lots of photos that you can then put up, and videos and show reels and stuff like that. And it really helped us sell the tickets. I mean, every event that I ran, we sold out our tickets based on how visually beautiful the events looked. I'll put some examples up here. When you're advertising to go to a night out, social media, say like your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikToks, are fantastic for spontaneous purchases of items under £30. Yeah. So a ticket to an event, if you're doing it under the £30 price point, those socials are the perfect place for that. And your marketing is really visually stimulating. So I actually set up a Facebook group back then. I mean, actually, when I did this, Instagram and TikTok didn't really exist. This is like about 10 years ago, but the principles still apply. You've actually just got more channels to put your stuff out on now. That I had a Facebook group, and I would post in individual groups that were related to, say, like 1920s events, and then local groups, and I would link in my website, or you can link in your, to your Ticketmaster or whatever, where you're selling the tickets, and entice them in. So you can do that for free if you don't have a marketing budget. I also paid to drive some traffic to my Facebook group back then. And it really worked. Actually, the marketing was actually really easy for this. One of the good things as well is that when you've run your first event, you need to make sure that you're bringing in everybody's emails, okay? Because your emails that is your customer list. So while you don't have a venue that people just drop into, you're going to be messaging them when you've got another event going. What I did was I made my own customers become the salespeople for my tickets. And how I did that was I have their email from them buying the last ticket. I email them out. Here's the next event. Oh, look, you can buy a table for 10 for a reduced price. Yeah. And so many people who bought like 1 or 2 tickets at the first event, they then came through and bought a table of 10, and they would be inviting all of their friends, oh, I had the most amazing night out, showing them the photos. And this was how it was really easy to build up and sell those tickets. You're not having to just market yourself all the time. So that was a really good strategy of the 10 tickets for that reduced price, because people they want to show their friends, you know, a really good event. And we also supplied a table for them for that. It depends on what your style of event is like, but just the reduction on the ticket price itself is really, really good and enticing, and you can get your own customers then to market for you. So as I say, it's had it was really low startup, low barrier to entry. If you're running it through another venue, you don't have to take on the liability of an actual venue, because venues, I don't know, you know, for wherever you might live, venues are a real significant burden. There's so many costs, and you have to tie yourself into a contract, and then you're beholden to that, and there's like a real financial burden of that. You don't actually need that financial burden, because you can run your events through other venues, and that keeps everything light and then keeps your profit margins higher, basically, you know. So as long as you've got the capacity in where you live and where you want to run this, you've got your small venues, your medium venues, and your large venues, and you have a discussion with them beforehand about, can I run this here? You know, I want to set up these ongoing events, say like you're running them monthly, every couple of months. You're going to have much more leverage once you've got a lot of customers coming in and you've got proof of concept and you're getting people in through the door. Then you're going to have more negotiation with regards to having a share of the bar.